CJ Flyer back with Fire in another YouTube video. Today teaching you how to manage your Dynasty Blueprint in College Football 27 Dynasty Mode. Whether you're new to the college football video game series, or you're switching over from College Football 26 to College Football 27 and you're a little bit confused with some of the new mechanics in Dynasty Mode, this beginner tutorial should give you the walkthrough that you need. Okay, so right out the gate from the team selection menu in Dynasty Mode, there's a lot of information here for each of the schools, but the two main important aspects that you want to pay attention to regarding the Dynasty Blueprint is the available Dynasty points and your Dynasty points budget. Every school in the game has a Dynasty point budget. As you would expect, the bigger, more established programs have the higher budgets, while the lower tier schools that are 0 and 1 stars have the lowest budgets in the game. Now, before I select Purdue as my team, if I click R1 on the PlayStation 5 or the right bumper on the Xbox Series X or S, you can see each school's current Dynasty points allocation breakdown. Now think of these Dynasty points as if it's real life money. There's 4 main categories within your program which the money that you have can get allocated to. Up at the top is the staff, then you've got athletic facilities, then you've got NIL that you are offering recruits, and then you've got NIL that you are offering to players that are currently on your roster in an attempt to retain them at the end of the season. You can also see on the right side of the screen the breakdown as to where the Dynasty points that you've earned has come from, with the 4 main influences being a school's conference prestige grade, the brand exposure grade, the stadium atmosphere grade, and the program tradition grade. This is of course why the more established programs have more Dynasty points to start a dynasty rather than the smaller ones. Okay, moving forward, we've gone ahead and started a dynasty with Purdue, and we are in the preseason. And from this preseason menu in the action submenu, we are going to select to hire staff and manage the blueprint. And this is going to bring up the Dynasty Blueprint interface. Now it looks very similar to what we saw in the team selection menu, but there's a couple other settings and indicators here that I want to point out. First, you'll notice below the Dynasty point allocation breakdown that there is a timeline for the entire season, starting with the preseason all the way through the end of the offseason. And within each segment of that timeline, it has little indicators that represent the icons of the Dynasty point allocation breakdown. And as we scroll up and down on the sidebar to the left and highlight over staff, facilities, recruiting NIL, and roster NIL, you can see that those icons will get highlighted on that timeline below. Now the main takeaway here is you can only make changes to the various categories within your Dynasty point allocation breakdown during those specific highlighted moments on the timeline. However, there are some restrictions as I'll continue to explain throughout the video. First, let's start with hiring staff. When we first click to hire staff, we can see the currently hired offensive and defensive coordinators for our program. Now at this moment in the preseason, we are not able to fire them, extend them, do whatever. We can't do anything with our coordinators. We can't hire new coordinators. That is going to be for a later time during the season. However, we are able to hire support staff. And in fact, this is the only time during the season in which support staff can be hired and fired. So if I go ahead now and select the empty staff slot, you can see that there is various support staff that can be hired, including Sports Performance Department, Recruiting Operations Department, Senior Director of Player Personnel, a Fundraising Department, and an Acquisition Department. And there's various tiers of the same boosts that you can get from each one of those departments, with their own naming convention to scale. Like for example, the Senior Director of Player Personnel is at the Platinum tier, but the Gold tier is titled the Director of Player Personnel as opposed to Senior Director. Now, as a smaller program, you would probably want to go for Bronze or Silver support staff, and as a more established program, you may consider Gold or Platinum level support staff. It really just depends how you'd like to manage your budget. The bonuses from these support staff vary, and they range from increasing recruiting hours to reducing the NIL payouts for recruits, as well as giving you Dynasty points in a future season. So you could pay Dynasty points up front to get more Dynasty points later at the end of the season going into the next season's annual budget cycle. Now, if you click to hire any of these support staff, as long as you are still within the preseason, you can go ahead and fire them, and you'll be granted a full refund. Okay, now backing out to the Dynasty Blueprint overview, let's go ahead now and look at managing our facilities in the preseason. When first opening up the facilities submenu, we can see the current level of our facility, and as Purdue, we have the elite facility. Now, the level of facility that the program that you are controlling has dictates what that grade is going to be for athletic facilities when you're recruiting players. Something to note is that athletic facilities have a base annual cost, and so the base annual cost for an elite facility is 400 Dynasty points. And that's why we can see in the Dynasty point allocation that we have 400 Dynasty points already going towards facilities. Now, during the end of season recap, we can go ahead and either upgrade or downgrade our facility. Upgrades cost a significant amount of Dynasty points, and it would require a lot of capital up front, so just be mindful of that. We can also go ahead and apply equipment slots to our athletic facility. So if I go ahead and select on an empty slot, you can see that there are various upgrades that we can purchase, including increasing the athletic facility's longevity, which gives a slight boost to the athletic grade that we currently have. We can also reduce wear and tear on our players, reduce injury chance on our players, reduce season health usage on our players. However, unlike the support staff, it's a one-time purchase that cannot be refunded, and as you can see in the lifespan column, it does have limited usage. So if we were to purchase the equipment that reduces wear and tear, that wear and tear reduction is only going to last the 4 weeks that we have it. And again, it cannot be refunded, so if you accidentally purchase it, you cannot get your Dynasty points back, even if you remove that equipment altogether. Okay, once again, going back to the Dynasty Blueprint overview. As you can tell from the timeline below, we can only manage staff and manage facilities during the preseason with specific limitations. And since that recruiting NIL and manage roster NIL icons are not present for the preseason, as that would suggest, we cannot make any changes to recruiting NIL or roster NIL at this time. If you click on the budget overview, it gives you a more detailed breakdown of the different categories where your Dynasty points are coming from. So like I said before, your conference prestige grade, your brand exposure grade, your stadium atmosphere grade, and your program tradition grade. And then you get a quick, brief description of each of those grades. There's also a miscellaneous row and a contract goals row. Now, the miscellaneous row, of course, includes some of those Dynasty point bonuses that you can get from the support staff, in addition to some other bonuses as well. And then contract goals are specifically regarding the AD expectations that you saw when you signed your coach contract. These are randomized goals based on the quality of your program, and each one has a different Dynasty point bonus that you can earn for completing them. Some of these goals are single season goals, and some of these goals are over multiple seasons. Okay, one more setting I would like to show in the Dynasty Blueprint program overview interface is in the bottom left corner, the strategy and settings subset of options. In short, this is there in case you want to automate any of the Dynasty Blueprint management settings. Basically, you're allowing the game's AI to dictate support staff and facility equipment upgrades for you, and to do it based on a preset budget. Now, I haven't tested this yet to see how worthwhile it is. I would definitely err on the side of caution, just in case you start having the AI purchase facility equipment upgrades that you had no intention on purchasing. Okay, now before we advance from the preseason into the regular season, one more item I want to look at is going into the recruiting interface. Now, I've already mentioned this in my NIL beginner tips tutorial, but if you look in the upper right hand corner of your screen in the recruiting interface, you'll notice that the Dynasty points remaining to spend on recruits is more than what you saw in the Dynasty Blueprint overview interface. Now, this is understandably very confusing, and I wish there was a better explanation in game for this. So to assist in my explanation of this, I'm going to once again go back to the Dynasty Blueprint overview window. And now let's look at this timeline here. So your annual budget resets during the end of season recap window, and you don't get any rollover points once you reach end of season. However, the recruiting period for this current season overlaps between two annual budget cycles. And so that bigger number that you see in the recruiting interface is the game making an assumption as to how many additional Dynasty points you may have once you get over into the next annual budget cycle during the end of season recap window. However, this number can be a bit misleading because it is assuming that any equipment upgrades that you purchased, any support staff that you paid for, coaches with expiring contracts, it's assuming that those Dynasty points may become available. It may also make assumptions based on certain coach abilities or certain bonuses from goals being reached. And so if you were to allocate all of the Dynasty points that you see available in the recruiting interface to recruit offers, you might not have any points left to retain talent that's already on your roster, to hire new coaches, or to purchase new upgrades for your athletic facilities. So my recommendation is, at the very bare minimum, you should use all of the Dynasty points that you see from the Dynasty Blueprint window. And if you decide to use any more than that, just err on the side of caution, remembering that you may have to spend more Dynasty points than you think you would have to going into next season. Okay, now advancing forward into the middle of the regular season, let's go back to that Dynasty Blueprint overview interface. Now, as the icons in the timeline show, we are only able to do manage facility equipment upgrades and recruiting NIL. We can still view our staff, but again, you cannot hire or fire support staff or coordinators at this time during the regular season. Now, when you select recruiting NIL in the Dynasty Blueprint overview interface, it's going to give you a quick summary of all of the recruits that you currently have on your recruiting board. And if you'd like to go directly into the recruiting interface, you can just click triangle on the PlayStation 5 or Y on the Xbox Series X or S from this little spreadsheet here. Okay, now we'll go ahead and advance forward to conference championships. Now, the game does not make it very obvious, but this is the only week in which you can fire your coordinators if they are not already on an expired contract. So from the action submenu, you'll have to click Manage Staff, and then that's when you're given the option to either negotiate a contract extension with your existing coordinator if they are on an expiring contract, or to just straight up fire the coach and start looking for new talent to replace them. Now, if you do go ahead and fire your coordinators here, you can't actually start looking through the pool of candidates until the following week during bowl season. So we're going to go ahead and do just that. We are going to advance to bowl season week 1. Now, I don't want to go too in-depth here on the coaching carousel, but just briefly, if you go ahead and see on the action submenu during the bowl season, whether it's weeks 1, 2, 3, or 4, you'll see a hire staff option there. You want to go ahead and click on that. And then from there, you can click to view the candidates for any of the 2 empty positions that you may have. Now, it's automatically going to show you recommended candidates to send offers to, but you can also go ahead and click L2 on the PlayStation 5 or the left trigger on the Xbox Series X or S to view different filters and start looking through all of the candidates that you desire. Each candidate has a different expectation regarding Dynasty point payout, and depending on which coach you're trying to hire, you don't necessarily need to give them the full payout. But again, I don't want to get too in-depth right now on the coaching carousel, just to show you what it looks like and how it's integrated into the Dynasty Blueprint. Okay, so once you've gone ahead and put in some offers for different candidates, what the game is going to do is look and see which candidate has the highest offer of Dynasty points, and it's going to remove that amount of Dynasty points from your budget. Now, as you continue to progress through the bowl season, once a candidate gets hired, it will change that allocation accordingly. So for example here, I did have an offer sent out to a better defensive coordinator. However, the defensive coordinator candidate that I sent a very low offer to ended up being the one that took the offer, took the job. And so then the Dynasty point breakdown did adjust accordingly. Okay, so as is typical, Purdue did not make a bowl game, and we are going to go ahead and advance forward to the end of season recap after the bowl season. Now, like I said before, end of season recap is very crucial because it is the only time in which you can reallocate the NIL to your existing roster in order to retain talent. And of course, Purdue being the mediocre program that they are, we have a ton of players on this roster that are asking for more NIL in order to stay instead of abandoning ship. Now, as I said earlier, the end of season recap is when the previous annual budget cycle ends and the new one begins. And so it's also time to review the upcoming season's Dynasty Blueprint. Now, since we met a couple of the AD's expectations, and we also got that support staff upgrade in which we earned extra Dynasty points after paying some Dynasty points up front, you can see in that miscellaneous row, in that contract goals row, we've got some additional Dynasty points now for the upcoming season's budget. Okay, now going back to the Dynasty Blueprint overview interface, there's something else I want to highlight here. So we look at the timeline, and we can see that we can do all 4 items. We can manage staff, we can manage facilities, we can do recruiting NIL, and we can do manage roster NIL during this offseason. However, I recommend you stay far away from the managed facilities equipment upgrades. Don't purchase any equipment because, as I said before, most of this equipment here only has a lifespan of 4 weeks, and it would be completely useless to reduce wear and tear or injury risk during the offseason when there's no games being played at all. Now, the one thing that you can do with managed facilities that, again, you can only do during the end of season recap is to upgrade or downgrade your athletic facility. Now, we don't nearly have the budget here at Purdue right now to be able to upgrade the facilities to the maximum level, so for the time being, we are just going to stay put at what we got. Okay, now we are going to advance from the end of season recap. We're going to go through and do players leaving. And then once you've completed players leaving, we're going to go ahead and advance forward to the transfer portal. Now at this point, the Dynasty points remaining that you see in the Dynasty menu and what you see in the recruiting interface should be the exact same number. So be mindful of the fact that the Dynasty points that you see remaining right now are not just for the transfers that you're trying to acquire in the portal, but also for high school recruits that you're going to be recruiting going into next season. And then of course, once you finish the portal, you'll go to National Signing Day. You'll have the opportunity to do position changes. Once you advance past position changes, you have the chance to do training. You're able to either do manual training or you can do the automated training that the game allows you to do. Then from there, you advance to encourage transfers, and then from there, you're back into the preseason of the following season. And then, once again, the cycle continues. So in summary, during the preseason is the only time that you can hire or fire support staff. Coordinators can only be fired during the conference championship week. Coordinators can only be hired during the bowl season weeks. Athletic facility equipment can be purchased at any time except during bowl season. Athletic facility upgrades and downgrades only occur during the end of season recap. Roster NIL can only be changed during the end of season recap as well. And then of course, recruits NIL can only be done either during the regular season or during the transfer portal weeks. Now, if you have any further questions regarding the basics of the Dynasty Blueprint and College Football 27 Dynasty Mode, please leave a comment down below. If you want to learn some quick tips regarding NIL for recruits and retaining talent on your roster, click the video on your left. And for another Dynasty tutorial, click the video on your right.